things are moving at Celtic, even if the transfer market itself feels painfully quiet right now, and that contrast is exactly what is fueling the tension around the club as we head into a decisive week. The window is closing fast, the clock is ticking louder by the day, and yet there is still that familiar sense of waiting, watching, and wondering whether decisive action is finally coming. With the deadline set for Monday night, there are only a handful of days left for the club to get business done, and the pressure is mounting not just because of the calendar, but because Celtic have matches to navigate in the middle of all this uncertainty. 2 games at Celtic Park await, and home comforts are welcome, but they also bring expectation. Thursday night in Europe is massive with qualification on the line, and then the league resumes at the weekend against familiar opposition yet again, a fixture that already feels like it has been played far too many times this season. In an ideal world, this would be a week of wins, momentum, and new faces through the door. But as ever with Celtic in recent windows, nothing feels straightforward. One of the dominant talking points coming out of the weekend is the decision by the club to appeal the red card shown to Austin Trusty. It was a moment that shifted the entire tone of the match, and the fallout has carried into the early part of the week. Celtic have moved quickly, confirming that an appeal has been lodged regarding the dismissal, which came after intervention from video review. The claim is wrongful dismissal, and notably, the case has been fast-tracked, meaning a decision is expected imminently. That in itself tells you how significant this is, because the outcome directly affects team selection for the weekend. If the appeal is successful, Trusty is available. If it fails, he is not, and that has knock-on effects given the current lack of depth in key defensive areas. The offense has been categorized as denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, and that definition is where the real argument lies. Celtic's position is clear, and it mirrors what many supporters felt watching the incident unfold in real time. The central issue is not whether there was contact, because there was, but whether it truly met the threshold of an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. There was defensive cover, the attacking player was moving away from goal, and the situation was far from clear-cut. That is why so many people have focused on the involvement of video review in the first place. This was not a clear and obvious error from the referee on the pitch, and when decisions sit in that grey area, intervention only amplifies frustration. Some will argue a red card all day long, others will say it never was, and that split itself tells you how subjective the call was. That subjectivity is exactly why this appeal could genuinely go either way. Even those convinced it should be overturned will admit there would be little surprise if the original decision is upheld, because consistency has never been a strong point in these situations. Away from the incident itself, the post-match noise did little to calm things down. Comments from the opposition camp raised eyebrows, particularly suggestions about Celtic being rattled and surprise at the red card decision. Managers will always play to their own gallery, but hearing those remarks out loud inevitably adds fuel to an already heated debate. There was also a touchline exchange involving members of the Celtic coaching staff, which was played down afterwards, framed as a moment of emotion rather than anything more sinister. Still, it is another example of how tense the atmosphere has become around the club, where every decision, every word, and every clip is scrutinized and dissected. From the Celtic dugout, there was little in the way of fireworks in the post-match press conference, but there were some important nuggets of information. Injury updates remain a concern, with one forward withdrawn as a precaution after feeling his hamstring, a reminder of how carefully minutes have to be managed for players still building fitness. There was also an admission that a key defender is carrying soreness, casting doubt over his involvement in the European match. Squad depth, or the lack of it, keeps rearing its head because every small injury feels magnified when options are already stretched. When questions turned to transfers, the response was telling. There was no grand promise, no bold declaration, just an acknowledgement that reinforcements are needed. That alone speaks volumes about where things stand. Behind the scenes, the picture is even less reassuring. The recruitment structure has clearly taken a hit following recent departures, and there is a sense that the club are scrambling to patch holes rather than executing a clear, long-term strategy. Stories of hastily assembled scouting efforts and reactive decision-making only reinforce the idea that Celtic are chasing their tail in this window. This is not about excuses, because with the resources available, Celtic should be leading, not reacting. The frustration among supporters comes from remembering a time when the club identified emerging talent across Europe, brought players in with resale value and hunger, and stayed ahead of the curve. That identity feels blurred now, replaced by short-term loans and stopgap solutions that might plug gaps but do little to inspire confidence. Defensive reinforcements have suddenly become an even bigger priority in light of the Trusty situation. But it is hard to shake the feeling that one suspension should not dictate an entire recruitment plan. Loans appear to be the preferred route, with permanent deals seemingly off the table for now, and while that might bring numbers in, it does not address the wider concern about direction. There is talk of additional signings across several positions, including the possibility of another goalkeeper, which raises further questions about priorities when more urgent needs remain unresolved. All of this feeds into a growing sense of unease as the deadline approaches because the stakes are high, the margin for error is slim, and the expectation at Celtic is always to compete on every front, not just to get by. As the debate around a recruitment continues to simmer, the wider impact on the pitch cannot be ignored because the current squad is being asked to carry a huge burden in the middle of a relentless schedule. The reality is that Celtic are still fighting on multiple fronts and doing so with a group that looks increasingly stretched. When you start looking ahead to crucial league fixtures and European nights at the same time, the lack of fresh options becomes impossible to gloss over. Every injury, every suspension, and every dip in form feels heavier than it should simply because there is so little room to maneuver. Supporters are not asking for luxury signings or headline-grabbing moves for the sake of it. They are asking for the basics to be covered so that the team can function at the level demanded by the shirt. This sense of frustration is heightened when comparisons are made with domestic rivals. Other clubs in the league seem capable of identifying targets, negotiating deals, and integrating players with far less drama, while Celtic appear to make even the simplest business feel complicated. That perception, fair or not, feeds into a narrative that the club has lost clarity in the transfer market. There was a time when Celtic were proactive, stepping into leagues across Europe to sign players on the rise, offering them a platform to win trophies and showcase their ability. That model brought success and profit, but it now feels distant, replaced by a reactive approach that leans heavily on loans from England, often involving players who are short on confidence or minutes. It may be a necessary short-term fix, but it does not feel like a strategy designed to sustain success. The pressure of this moment also weighs heavily on the players already at the club, particularly those relied upon as leaders. Callum McGregor's recent media appearance was telling, not just in what he said, but in how he said it. Amid speculation about potential moves away, he made it clear that his focus remains on Celtic and that the difficult period the club is experiencing has only strengthened his determination. That kind of message matters in a dressing room, especially when results have been inconsistent and confidence has taken a hit. There is a difference between words and actions, of course, but McGregor's track record suggests his commitment is genuine, even if his form has dipped in recent weeks. It is important to acknowledge that form does not exist in a vacuum. When the overall structure around a player is unstable, performances inevitably suffer. McGregor has carried the midfield for years, setting standards and driving the team forward, and expecting him to do that indefinitely without adequate support is unrealistic. There are players in the squad who look as though the hunger has faded, who seem to be going through the motions rather than embracing the challenge of domestic dominance and European competition. McGregor does not fit that description, even on his worst days, and that is why improving the quality around him is so crucial. Better players elevate those already in the team, and that ripple effect can change the mood of an entire squad. Looking ahead to the immediate fixtures, the importance of results cannot be overstated. European progression offers not just prestige, but a psychological lift, a chance to step away from the relentless pressure of the league and test the group against different opposition. There is a sense that Europe can act as a release valve, providing a different kind of challenge that might actually help the team reset mentally. A strong performance under the lights at Celtic Park could shift momentum, lift confidence, and remind everyone what this group is capable of when things click. That, in turn, could carry into the weekend, where league points are non-negotiable in a title race that allows no margin for error. At the same time, there is an underlying feeling that results alone will not be enough to silence the wider concerns. Wins can paper over cracks, but they do not fix structural issues, and supporters are acutely aware of that distinction. The call is not for panic, but for competence, for clear decision-making, and for a sense that the club knows exactly where it is going. As the window edges closer to closing, every hour without movement adds to the anxiety, because opportunities missed now can define the rest of the season. Celtic have the resources, the platform, and the expectation to be stronger than this, and that is what makes the current situation so hard to accept. There is still time for the narrative to change, but it requires action, not words. The coming days will reveal whether lessons have been learned or whether familiar patterns will repeat themselves. What happens next will shape not only the squad, but the belief of the support, and belief is everything at a club of this size. The matches ahead demand focus, intensity, and resilience, but they also demand backing from above, because no team can thrive indefinitely when it feels like it is standing still while others move forward. What also sits beneath all of this is the growing disconnect between expectation and reality, because Celtic are not operating in survival mode. They are supposed to be setting the pace. When supporters look at the resources available and then look at situations where players are being asked to cover unfamiliar positions or play through physical issues, the frustration becomes understandable. This is not about demanding perfection, it is about demanding coherence. A club of this stature should not be entering decisive weeks hoping that nothing goes wrong. It should be building from a position of strength, rotating when necessary, and attacking competitions with confidence rather than caution. The mood around the stadium reflects that tension. Celtic Park remains a fortress in terms of atmosphere, but there is an edge to it now, a sense that patience is wearing thin. Every misplaced pass, every slow build-up Every defensive lapse is met with a sharper reaction, not because the support has turned, but because it cares deeply about where this is heading. The players feel it, the staff feel it, and that pressure, it can either crush a group or sharpen it. Much depends on how the next few games unfold and whether the club provides tangible backing to match the demands placed on the squad. Ultimately, this period feels like a crossroads rather than just another busy week. Decisions made now will echo well beyond the end of the window, influencing confidence, momentum, and belief for months to come. Celtic have an opportunity to steady the ship, reinforce the message that standards matter, and remind everyone why this club expects to compete at the highest level domestically and in Europe. Whether that opportunity is taken remains to be seen, but the sense of urgency has never been clearer, and the margin for hesitation has all but disappeared. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. The Scottish football grapevine is buzzing with whispers that have travelled fast and loud through the East End of Glasgow. BRERETON Díaz, a name that has long stirred debate and excitement among supporters north of the border, is now being strongly linked with a surprise, lightning-fast agreement with Celtic. While nothing has been paraded officially, sources close to the situation suggest that the striker has already given a clear signal that he is ready to pull on the green and white hoops. The story doing the rounds is that talks moved at remarkable speed, catching even seasoned observers off guard. What began as casual contact is said to have quickly turned into something far more concrete, with BRERETON Díaz convinced by the club's sporting project, European ambitions, and the promise of being a central figure rather than a peripheral option. Insiders claim the player was keen to settle matters swiftly, avoiding a long, drawn-out saga that often drains energy on both sides. From Celtic's perspective, the move makes a certain kind of sense. The club has been quietly assessing options to add physical presence and directness to their attacking line, and BRERETON Díaz fits that profile neatly. His blend of power, work rate, and eye for space is seen as well suited to the demands of the Scottish game, particularly in matches where intensity and resilience matter as much as finesse. There is also a sense that this potential transfer carries symbolic weight. BRERETON Díaz has previous experience in Britain and is familiar with the scrutiny that comes with playing in a passionate football culture. Those close to the dressing room believe his mentality could align well with Celtic's expectations, where consistency and hunger are valued just as highly as flair. For now, the club remain tight-lipped and official channels offer no confirmation. Still, among supporters and pundits alike, the feeling is growing that this is more than idle gossip. If the rumours hold true, Celtic may have quietly secured a statement signing, one agreed in near silence, yet capable of making plenty of noise once the shirt is finally unveiled. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.